morning, good afternoon, good evening. This video from a very familiar name, Mambo Svosve of Change Radio, has been circulating in the social media. I think one cannot let, let it go without commenting on it. The people of Zimbabwe, if they haven't realized it by now, they should know that MDC CCC leaders are Zanu PF Team B in all but name. These guys have been involved in politics to help Team A, Zanu PF Team A win, and for Zanu PF Team A to have legitimacy. And all along, they play the double game of pretending that they care about what is happening to the ordinary Zimbabweans, specifically that they care about change. These guys do not care about change. And I think we need to deal with this problem if we are ever going to get out of this mess. In this video clip, Svosve is talking about action, what needs to be done to stop Mnangagwa achieving his objective of amending the constitution so that he could stay in power until 2030. That is part of a fight, while outwardly it sounds we are on the same boat. But in reality, we must remember who MDC CCC leaders are. And by extension, people like Mambo Svosve and this Change Radio, they are cheerleaders, what they stand for. Let's just listen for a few minutes to the video clip.
Geza and his fellow comrades begin to speak the language that Zimbabweans have been speaking all this time. Geza and his war veterans begin to speak the language that the opposition has been speaking all this time. We have talked about the corruption. We have talked about the massive looting that has been going on, the plundering of Zimbabwe's resources by Emmerson Mnangagwa and Zanu PF. We have been talking about the capture of state institutions, the court in particular, the police, and to some extent, the army. We as opposition have been talking about the maladministration in our country, that Zimbabwe is not suffering because we do not have resources, but we are not managing our resources well. We have talked about all that. And we have taken action. I know some people will be pointing fingers at the opposition and say, you were just talking. But we have taken action. We have had demonstrations. We have demonstrated, even the people in the diaspora have expressed what I'm expressing, what Geza is expressing right now. So all I'm saying is there is nothing special about what Geza has been doing or is doing or what the war veterans are doing. They are just now speaking the same language as us. They are now saying the same things that we've been saying for the past 2 decades.
Let's just stop there. He is absolutely right. They've been talking about change. The truth of the matter is, they've not done anything. And that is at the heart of the problem here. MDC leaders, even when they launched the party in 1999, they launched it on the promise they would deliver democratic change. As the party name implies, the movement for democratic change. They got into power into the 2008 to 2013 GNU. That was the golden opportunity for them to implement the democratic reforms. So the question has to be asked, why is it that in 5 years of the GNU, they failed to implement even one token reform? Zanu PF has been able to rig elections. 2023, the party rigged the elections blatantly because no reforms had been implemented. We can't keep on saying, oh, we've been talking about it, we've been holding demonstrations. The changes that were required, the democratic changes that were required, the best opportunity to implement those reforms was, was during the GNU. Why is it that MDC failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU? It's not that they were not reminded. They were reminded. Some of the leaders, like Samuel Spepangomo, have admitted that they were advised about the reforms and they didn't pay attention. Credit where credit is due. South Africa's minister, who was in charge of the Zimbabwe GNU, Lindiwe Zulu, did her best to push the MDC guys to implement the reforms. She would speak to the MDC leaders and remind them that, what are you doing about the reforms? You need to push the reforms in confidence. And then they would go and speak to Zanu PF and say, oh, she's pushing us to implement reforms. Which was the reason why Mugabe was angry with her and called a street woman, told President Jacob Zuma to control your street woman. Such vulgar and unbelievable language being spoken by a president was unbelievable. And yet he did. Why? Because she was one of the individuals who had been pushing the MDC leaders to implement reforms. They failed to implement even one token reform. When SADC realized that no meaningful reforms had been implemented, they called a special SADC summit in June 2013, in which they advised Morgan Tsvangirai and company that you should not go into the elections without reforms. They didn't listen. They came back home and went ahead with the elections. Zanu PF went on to blatantly rig those elections. SADC, what could they do? They had to accept the process, the results. We cannot deny that the 2008 to 2013 GNU, the primary purpose of the GNU was to implement the reforms. And for any Zimbabwean, even now, to continue to pretend that they don't understand that is simply beggars belief. The reforms were the single most important task the GNU was supposed to carry out. They didn't. And ever since the GNU's failure, these MDC leaders have participated in flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that if we participate, we give legitimacy to Zanu PF. I've often shown this quotation from David Coulthard's book, in which he admitted the 2013 elections were flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step was to withdraw. But he and his friends did not withdraw, as he explains there on the quote at the bottom of the screen. They did not withdraw because they fear that if they withdraw, the other faction would participate and they will get the gravity seats. This has been at the heart of the problem of Zimbabwe's political problem these last 25 years. The nation risked life, livelihoods, and limbs to elect the MDC CCC leaders into positions of power for the express purpose that they would implement the democratic reforms designed to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections. The truth is, the MDC leaders did not implement any of those reforms. And they've been participating in flawed elections for the same reason they failed to implement even one token reform during the GNU: greed. It's all very well for Chief Svosve now to be talking of coming out with his guns blazing, pretending that the MDC CCC leaders are now fighting Zanu PF. The truth of the matter is, we would not have Zanu PF in positions of power right now if we had implemented the democratic reforms. And the fear is, if the MDC leaders are allowed to have their way, they will participate in the 2028 elections to give Zanu PF legitimacy and thus perpetuating the dictatorship. In other words, we will be back to where we are now. FDC, Triple C leaders, like I said, as Zanu PF Team B playing for Team A to win and to have political legitimacy. The issue of MDC, Triple C leaders selling out is an issue that many Zimbabweans, it beggars belief why many Zimbabweans have failed to appreciate that problem. Here is one opposition leader admitting that this is a serious problem. This is Margaret Longo speaking on the 2023 elections and why the Triple C leaders like David Coulthard, Fazai Mahere, and many, many others who had won those, participated in those elections and won them, took up their seats even after SADC and the AU election observers had condemned the election process as flawed. They took them up out of greed. Listen to what she has to say.
Business. This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business. Because they look at it as a business seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation, because if they go to parliament, you are employed. You get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you are out, you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
You get a pension. Then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in parliament. This is why we have violence in this country. Because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, a very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the Triple C party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system. And we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament. Because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way Zanu PF was going to roll alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
But they went anyway?
But they went. They realized that, you heard them complain, I used my own money to be in parliament. But what about me who have voted for you? I used my own money. So the idea is to recover. Is it a business where you want to recover your losses? Is it a business? Politics, is it a business where everyone else, when you get in parliament, you want to recover your losses? A good example is now, parliamentarians have been elected. I don't know when we last saw our member of parliament in this.
This is at the heart of the problem in Zimbabwe. We have a regime, Zanu PF, that has ridden roughshod over the people's rights and freedoms, including the right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. The people of Zimbabwe realized that. By the late 1990s, they realized that Zanu PF, as long as they've got carte blanche powers to rig the elections, nothing in the country will change. And they committed themselves to electing an opposition whose primary purpose was to implement the reforms. 25 years since the MDC-CCC party came on the political stage, not even one token reform has been implemented. Why? Because they sold out. Ever since the GNU sellout, they've been participating in these flawed elections out of greed. This must be said and be said again and again with emphasis, because that is the reality. These MDC guys will now try their best to appear to the nation as the champions of change, when in reality, they have failed the nation. The greatest fear here with this MDC is that they are going to convince the people that they are fighting, they're still fighting in the people's corner. And come 2028 elections, they will participate in those flawed elections and thus give Zanu PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. The day the people of Zimbabwe realize that MDC-CCC as Zanu PF Team B in all but name will be a very important and significant day in Zimbabwean politics, because that will mark the day when the people will start looking for a truly competent opposition that will carry out the important task of implementing the democratic reforms to stop Zanu PF rigging the elections and perpetuating the dictatorship. Seriously think about it. We need to put an end to opposition leaders who keep pretending that they are fighting in the people's corner, when in reality they are the ones who are conniving to keep the Zanu PF dictatorship in power. I do not believe Mambo Svosve and his friends in MDC-CCC are fighting in the people's corner. They've long stopped fighting in the people's corner. They will pretend that they're fighting in the people's corner for the purposes, for their own selfish reasons, because the reward of the gravy train seats are given to those who manage to con the people to participate in the flawed elections. And people must wake up to that reality. That is what we have got to fight. We should know who is fighting in our corner and stop being conned into believing that everyone who says I'm fighting for change is actually fighting for change. I repeat, MDC, Triple C have long stopped fighting the People's Corner. They are Zanu PF Team B in all but name. They've been fighting to make sure that Team A wins and Team A has legitimacy. That is the truth. Think about it. Thank you and have a good evening.